About a month or two ago, I was stuck in a rut. I actually made a video about it, about feeling lost in life, and I openly admitted that I was feeling completely lost without a sense of direction anywhere. But recently, I've also, over the past few months, experienced probably the most dramatic internal and even external shift that I've probably ever been through. When I made that video, I thought that quitting porn and vaping and quitting weed and smoking of any description and improving my lifestyle habits and all these other ways, which is something I've always struggled with, I thought that would be the end of it. And to be honest with you, I was even a little bit skeptical as to if those changes were going to stick, because I've always kind of gone through this cycle of intense motivation and inspiration and changing my life, and then within a few weeks or maybe a month or so, I'll be back at square one again. So I was a little bit skeptical that this thing was actually a permanent change, although it felt that way. But since the last video, the changes have just been multiplying and just been snowballing, and it's a little bit ridiculous. So in this video, I'm even more inspired to talk to you guys and give you some real practical takeaways, some step-by-step stuff that I did to achieve this internal shift. And in the last video, I talked a little bit about it, but in today's video, I'm going to go into more depth. I'm also going to talk about the practical steps that actually you could take to achieve this kind of inner transformation yourself as well. So first, let me talk about a problem that we all seem to have at some point or another. Maybe you have this problem right now. You're stuck in a rut. There's something invisible that's stopping you from moving forward in life and making changes that you know would improve your life. That might be on the basis of your habits. It might be starting a meditation practice and sticking to it. It might be in your career. It might be starting a side hustle business. It might be in your relationships even. There's something in you that when you start taking a few steps in a positive direction, something just pulls you back in. It's like something gets activated, drags you back to the place where you were before, and then before you know it, you're back at square one. So my question is, what is this invisible force? An answer that I landed on recently is that these are our unprocessed emotional wounds, our traumas, our deeply held fears, the stuff that sits in our unconscious mind deep within that we're not even in contact with, that gets triggered without us really knowing it. To give a little bit of background, one type of therapy that's fairly recent, that's gained a lot of popularity, is a type of therapy called IFS, Internal Family Systems Therapy. This was founded by a guy called Richard Schwartz. The central idea of IFS is that our mind consists of multiple different parts. Our mind is not one entity, our personality is not one entity, it's multiple different parts. And IFS refers to these emotional unconscious wounds as different parts of our minds that we lost touch with a long time ago. And how does this happen? Let me explain. Let's say, for example, you're playing in the park and you're like 6 or 7 years old. You fall, you hurt your foot, you start crying, and what you're looking for is reassurance and safety and comfort and acknowledgement. But instead, your father walks over, and instead of giving you the things that you need and acknowledging you and helping you, your father says, "Don't be a big baby, stop being a girl, it's not that bad, get up, dust yourself off, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about." In that moment, you're afraid, because as a kid, you don't want your father to leave you, because that might literally mean your death. Abandonment might be death to a child. So in order to fulfill your dad's wishes, you take that part of you that's upset, that's crying, and you push it down and push it away, and you try and drive it out of awareness. When you consistently push a part of you away, this actually forms a part of you that's alive in your unconscious mind. And it's a part of you that's still crying. It's as if there's a split. Your psyche splits and fragments into different parts. In IFS, they call these split off parts exiles. And your exiles sit deep in your unconscious mind, and they influence your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors sort of behind the curtain without your conscious awareness. You can think of them in a fairly simple way as an inner child. Like there's a child within you that's hurt, that's alone, that's in pain, that's afraid, that needs acknowledgement, that's emotionally stuck at the place at some point in the past. But let me just explain to you why this part of you actually sabotages your efforts to try and create a good life. Because do you not think that's a bit bizarre? Surely, if you were going to create a good life, all the parts of you would be on board with that. So you start taking action in your life to change things, but your inner child is still scared, afraid, and you are not in contact with your inner child at all. So what happens is your inner child's fears are triggered. When the inner child's fears are triggered, when you are emotionally triggered, you have defense mechanisms that kick into gear to prevent emotional pain. In IFS, they call these firefighters. And this could come in the form of pornography, it could come in the form of binging on Netflix, binging on food. It could even socially come in as kind of people pleasing, or avoiding conflict, or avoiding people altogether and isolating and withdrawing yourself. Anything that soothes emotional pain is something that you will likely go to. And it's possibly, and in all likelihood, it is something that you learned to do a long time ago as well. This describes the entire problem in a nutshell. The problem is you are stuck in a cycle. The inner child within you is wounded still, in pain, lost and afraid. You start taking actions, the inner child gets emotionally triggered. That manifests as an unbearable emotion that you can't have, you really struggle with. Your defense mechanisms then get triggered, which bring the emotion down, but you never actually get out of the cycle. You're always kind of stuck in this loop. This is why you are stuck in life. This is why you struggle to change your state. This is why you struggle to change your circumstances, because you are stuck in a cycle. And loads of people try and tackle this problem by surface level solutions, like productivity systems or habit trackers and different apps and all this other kind of stuff that just tackles the thing on the surface level. But listen, it doesn't matter what tool you're using. If the inner child is wounded, if the inner child is in pain, the inner child will sabotage everything you try and do. So now I'm going to talk about how we can actually overcome this problem, interrupt the cycle, and prevent it from imprisoning us in the same patterns of behavior that keep us stuck in life. The problem I had is that I was using stimulation to avoid pain. So the first thing is to slow down. I would drink 3 strong Portuguese coffees before 10 a.m. And then I'd spend all day on Reddit looking at disturbing content like Ukraine combat footage or people fighting each other. Why? Because my inner family was in pain and I did not want to notice. Eventually this came to a head though, because I went back to visit my actual family, my external family, and the pain became so intense that my defense mechanism of sort of overstimulating myself, it failed, it burst. The pain was so strong that it punctured the defense mechanism. And that's when I had absolutely no choice but to just slow down and listen. That's when I cut out caffeine. I started going for long walks without headphones, just by myself. And I started spending just more time throughout the day, just 5 minutes or so, just sitting, doing nothing, and just feeling what was going on in the moment. Eventually, that initial pain, that pain that was just there to get my attention, it subsided. And it gave way to a kind of awareness, like a deeper awareness of what was really going on. The second part of this is to reconnect. It wasn't enough for me to just slow down and simply be aware. I still felt that things weren't fully complete. I felt like there was something in me that wanted to come out and express itself. And there were a few ways that I did that. Now, I already had, and already still have, a passion for writing. It's something that I do very naturally. It's something that if people, like no one needs to remind me to write, for example. So I harnessed this by writing letters back and forth with my inner child. And I'd basically write a paragraph to my inner child, and then I would allow my inner child to write a paragraph back, and I'd kind of have this dialogue that went back and forth, back and forth. Online, you might read of some advice where it says write a long letter to your inner child and then write a long letter from your inner child back to you. And this is good advice, but I never really took it. Whenever I'd start writing to my inner child just straight away had some things to say. And I needed to create the kind of space for it to do that. Another thing I did, I'm quite articulate. It's how I can make YouTube videos, it's how I can get on camera and talk to people and stuff like that. So I used that. I was able to just have conversations with myself. For example, if I was feeling anxious, I would sit, slow down, and then I'd say, hey, Ollie, because I also call my inner child Ollie. My name is Oliver, but I call my inner child Ollie. How you doing, man? And then I'd sit there and just I'd allow the voice to come through and be like, oh, shit, man, I'm really nervous. And then I'd kind of have this back and forth conversation. Later on, a client of mine told me, when I shared this in a session, that this is actually a practice called voice dialogue, and there's even been a book written about it. And the last technique I used is inner child meditations. The best meditations I've found for this are from the book Homecoming by John Bradshaw. The meditations in the book have been uploaded to YouTube by some absolute legend. I need to reach out and thank this person because there's like 6 of them from the book, and each of them specialize in a different phase of your upbringing. So there's one called Reparenting Your Inner Toddler, another one for reparenting your adolescent, for example. So I'm going to pop those in the description below so you can check those out for yourself. The more I started using these sort of techniques, I realized that my inner child and even my inner teen, they were different for me, held some pretty painful beliefs. My inner child believed that he is unworthy, that he doesn't deserve good things in life, that he's a bad boy, he's just fundamentally bad as a person. He believed that no one really likes him. Not really. He believed that he was a burden on the world. He was a burden to his parents. That is such a fucking painful thing for a child to believe. And when I connected with that, I was like, oh man, that's hard. That's hard to go through life believing that. And then it dawned on me. It made sense all of a sudden why I found it so difficult to consistently publish YouTube videos. If you look at my publishing schedule, it's all over the map because my inner child was sabotaging me. Because he thought, don't put yourself out there too much, because if you do that, you're going to be exposed, people are going to laugh at you, people are going to think you're an idiot and this kind of stuff. So he was sabotaging me before we gave the world a chance to do it to us ourselves. It was like a self-protection mechanism. The third phase is to nurture yourself, to nurture that part of you. With all of these painful beliefs uncovered, I uncovered all of the darkness, all of the painful stuff that my inner child believed about the world, about himself, about other people. It was then that my therapist gave me a bit of advice that blew my mind. It was advice that I'd heard at other places in time from other people online, etc. But it seemed that the advice at this exact moment in time was enough. It was exactly what I needed to hear. She said, Oliver, what do you think would happen if you gave that child in you everything that you didn't get growing up? I was like, I'd never thought of it quite like that before. I mean, a part of me was skeptical as well because I thought, surely it's not enough. Surely me giving that to my inner child is not enough, right? It just feels like a drop in the ocean. I decided to give it a go anyway. Now, I didn't feel comfortable being a father or trying to muscle in as a father to my inner child. What made more sense for me and felt more comfortable for me was being a loving big brother. During the course of my day and my life, when I noticed myself getting emotionally triggered, someone says something, someone does something, some minor disappointment that might have something to do with me, etc., I would notice this emotional triggering come up. Then I would slow down, reconnect, and then I would nurture. I would speak to myself, speak to the inner child as there actually is a child in the room that is crying, that's upset, that feels like he's let everyone down. I would say, you're okay. I'd say your needs matter. I'd say we all make mistakes. It doesn't mean you're broken. I'm never going to leave you. Their feelings are not your fault. It's perfectly okay for you to be and do whatever you want. And you know what? It actually worked. But the real change, the real big shift happened in the next step. And that's step number 4, encourage and lead. My inner child and my inner teen were both driving the bus of my life. They were in charge of things since I was 15 years old. Why? Because they didn't trust me. They didn't trust my leadership. A big part of this work is what we call strengthening the adult. With the help of my mentor, I got clear on what my values are, what I wanted my life to look like, what I wanted my career to look like, my relationships, my health, and my vision for the future. Without this sense of direction, your inner family, the toddler, the teen, the adolescent, whatever, they're just going to run the house. They're going to throw paint all over the walls, they're going to eat everything in the fridge, they're going to flip tables. If you've got an inner teenager that's rebellious, he's going to smash some windows and throw a party. It's going to be pure chaos without your leadership. So I decided to take my place as the leader of this internal family. I got them all around the table and said, listen lads, I love you, you're my boys, but this is where we're going to go, and guess what? You are going to fucking love it. I promise you. I negotiated with them, and I also set some internal boundaries, like no video games until you've finished your work. Get some fresh air and exercise every single day. Go to bed by 12 p.m. and I'll give you a little reward following day, maybe an espresso coffee or something like that. This part is beautiful because it's the part where your life really changes. But bear in mind, you will still slip up. Nobody's perfect. You're in a family, you're not perfect. But it's up to you to be the encouraging force, to be the wise, loving king, not the tyrannical dictator. So I mentioned in the beginning of the video that quitting porn and losing weight, I've lost about 3.5 kilos now, and quitting vaping and all these other habits that just have no place in my life, quitting all of that stuff. I told you that that was just the beginning, and that's exactly right. The real change I've noticed is in my relationships to other people, to my clients, to my external family. Before, I was avoidant. I was a nice guy. I didn't have any boundaries. I felt guilty just all the time, just for being myself, just for saying no to stuff, which rarely ever happened. But I just carried around this heaviness, this burden of myself. Most of this has gone completely, at least 80% of it. And overall, I've just managed to relax into being peacefully myself. That's why going forward, I want this channel to focus on helping you heal. Helping you heal the shit that ages ago told you that you weren't okay just as you were. And then become fully yourself, more authentic in the world, and show the world who you really are. That's what I want to focus on in this channel going forward. And if you resonate with this approach, if you've been nodding your head a lot, if you've been taking notes, if this really sort of resonates with you, then you might be interested to know that I work with clients directly on this. So if you're interested in that, if you've got some questions, then I offer a free call. Check out the description below to book that. If you want to just binge some more content though, I highly recommend you check this video out next, where I talk about, this was made a few months ago, why I was feeling lost. And I made it in the midst of me feeling lost. So I highly recommend you check that video out because there's some insights there. Maybe feeling lost is not the bad thing you might think it is. Maybe a breakdown might be preparing you for a breakthrough. As always, I appreciate the hell out of you guys, and I will see you next time. Take care.